From Synozur, this is Polaris. I'm Chris McNulty. Every leader believes they know what's really happening inside their own company. Almost none of them do. Management scientists even have a name for it, the iceberg of ignorance, the finding that the people at the top are aware of only a sliver of the problem sitting on the front line. So what if you could see the whole iceberg? What if every employee got an honest mirror of how their colleagues really experience them, and every leader got the unfiltered truth in real time? Today, we explore the human barriers to honest feedback and a system built to dissolve them. This is Polaris. Welcome to Polaris Pathways. I'm your host, Chris McNulty, Chief Technology Officer at Synozur. Synozur, the transformation company, reimagines business for our clients, navigating strategies and leadership culture with ease. Today, I'm happy to introduce Petar Kralev to the show. Petar is the founder of Mirror 360, a workplace feedback platform built to surface the honest, real-time truth about how organizations actually work. Born in Bulgaria, he was 7 when communism collapsed and 18 when he left to build the American dream. Petar studied business at UC Berkeley and worked across finance, technology, and management consulting before setting out to solve a problem he kept seeing everywhere: the human barriers to telling the truth at work. He'll join us in a few minutes, but first, let's define our terms and our data points. As usual, our reading list and references will be included in the show notes. First, the headline news. Gallup's State of the Global Workplace 2026 finds global employee engagement fell to just 20% last year, its lowest level this decade, an estimated $10 trillion in lost productivity worldwide. Strikingly, Gallup attributes most of the recent decline to falling engagement among managers themselves. Zoom in on the U.S., and the picture is just as stark. By one 2026 engagement trends report, only about 31% of American employees are actively engaged, while 17% are actively disengaged, engagement near its lowest level in a decade. Okay, we have Petar waiting in our virtual green room. Let's go. Welcome back. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Petar Kralev. Petar, welcome to Polaris. Where are you calling from today?
Oh, I'm in Austin, where it's sweltering 92 degrees or something like that. Very humid.
You and I have spoken before, but you probably have not spoken to our audience. As we mentioned, you're originally from Bulgaria. You witnessed the collapse of that system. You left there when you were about 18, came to America. Take us through the journey that takes you from Bulgaria and brings you to Mirror 360.
Well, we probably don't have a lot of time for this because it's quite a windy journey, but you're right. While I have still the connection to the Bulgarian food, it's been more than 20 years since I came to America. And as a wide-eyed 18-year-old, I was here to build the American dream, whatever that really meant. I did all the kind of right things. I graduated kind of top of my class in finance. Then I did some a stunt in finance and consulting. Then did business degree at Berkeley, management consulting, corporate management, and in all these kind of steps in the ladder, I realized now I was kind of doing what the outside world was telling me. I guess I was supposed to be doing, but it all culminated in this universal understanding of kind of how the corporation operates and how much friction there is in the corporation because of how humans communicate. Like, we don't really easily reveal what we honestly think about each other or about what we see around us in the work context. And that is a crazy, crazy expensive problem. I had the unique kind of personal perch on the problem, but also corporate/finance angle to how expensive this problem is. And that's really what brought me to build Mirror 360.
And I know when you set up Mirror 360, you did it with a partner who coincidentally is also from Bulgaria.
You're right.
How did you two meet and decide to set up this new entity?
Well, if you don't believe in serendipity, I'll tell you you should, because I met my co-founder literally 3 months before the vision struck me. Of all places in Oahu, Hawaii, thanks to a common friend of ours from China. So even though we happen to be Bulgarian, we really didn't meet in Bulgaria by any chance. We were not in Bulgarian circles per se. But he saw the same issue at Microsoft. He was a veteran there for 17 years, and he tells me how he always thought it would be the engineering problems starting off his career. He thought the engineering problems would be the hardest, but it was never the engineering problems. It was always the people problems that stood in the way of progress where he was. So when he saw what I was doing, he consulted and advised for us for about a year, and then he decided to jump ship and join me full time.
So when we first met, you told me a story about a coworker who had lunch with you, and that's led to the foundation of Mira 360. I'd love you to share that with our audience.
Yeah. So the lunch was a setup, and then it was a Zoom call that really triggered the vision. The lunch was a setup where I had already observed that coworker who was very nice and hardworking employee, but put in a role that really challenged her big time. And I saw it from the outside, but at that lunch meeting, she shared personally how exhausting and stressful the role was for her, while at the same time, she felt very proud of the role and the people she got to work with. So I stood there feeling the pressure to just validate her feelings and not really feeling I could tell her my honest view at that moment. And that was a moment that passed, a moment of potential clarity and truth that I did not take. So a couple of weeks forward, we're sitting in a Zoom call, and that coworker was leading the call, and you can tell the faces on the screen. That coworker had lost the room, but she didn't seem to realize it. So it was after the end of that Zoom call that a thought passed through my head: how could she not see herself the way we all saw her? And that the answer to that question is what triggered the vision for Mirror 360. I think, many times it's that personal feedback challenge. We often, in the way of ourselves, there are emotional barriers. There are many fear factor kind of barriers that prevent us from sharing our truths with each other. And in the corporate setting, it becomes a very expensive problem.
So I know in the corporate setting, some refer to this as the iceberg of ignorance. And I might think that the bigger a company is, the more likely it is to invest in those feedback systems that you need to prevent ignorance from becoming a bigger issue about how people are interacting with each other. But you've helped me understand that isn't always the case, is it?
Not really. And when you say feedback systems, I would presume you're talking about certain Slack, maybe messages or meetings cadence.
I think it's even simpler than that. The bigger a company is, the more likely that you have formal review structures, places where you're supposed to be giving feedback. You have bigger learning and development budgets, bigger HR departments. So one would think with all of those ingredients, feedback should just happen naturally. But in fact, I think it gets worse.
It absolutely gets worse because none of these systems actually extract the honest perspectives of people. If you think about formal reviews and systems that HR really puts in place, their primary objectives is to document and de-risk from the organization getting sued in case of certain lawsuits. If you ask anybody, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 executives will tell you, oh yeah, we know this is not the honest feedback we're getting documented. We're getting documented some stuff. And the challenge here is that the honest perspectives, the honest feedback is the only reflection of reality. So when corporations actually fail to gather honest perspectives, that means corporations fail to see themselves as they actually are in real time. So the challenge is really that human barrier to sharing the honest perspective that we're resolving. And everything in place today was actually built for and structured around a very different problem altogether.
Yeah. My brother works in the film industry down in LA. My brother likes to joke about LA feedback, which is, I love your script. Great. We can't wait to make it. Just a few things. It's a drama. We want to make it a comedy. The hero needs to be a woman, not a man. Is there any way there any way instead of a knife, they could use a gun? And instead of London, I want them to be in Paris. And it's a musical now. Like, it's impossible sometimes, I think, for people to be as direct as they can be. And it sounds like it's something that you've solved. Could you walk us through how are you solving those honest feedback challenges?
Yeah. Well, your example was very vivid. It kind of got me thinking a lot of things about the person that's giving that type of feedback. But
Yep.
in the work context that we're talking about, of coworkers observing each other and the workplace, there are really two big things that are the barriers that we remove. And one more thing that is the incentive to actually speak up, which is what we insert in the system. So really three key things. First is safety. You should feel safe to express your honest perspective, and that begins and ends there. If the system you have in place does not provide complete anonymity beyond any doubt, you already have polluted the signal. That's why we designed Mirror 6 not just around anonymity in terms of the system design, but also the brand for anonymity. No employee is going to trust HR telling them something is anonymous. They have to trust the outside party that it's anonymous, and we put our brand on the line for that. The second thing is ease. No person is going to bother speaking up much if it's difficult. If they have to jump through hoops, they have to think a lot, they have to justify their answer, write paragraphs upon paragraphs of things. So what we've done is to standardize what we ask so much that both it captures the universal case of what we want to get to know, but also it takes 20 seconds. So when it's so easy to speak up and safe, guess what? People will start doing it. We are seeing something like 90% at launch completion rates for thousands of sample sizes. So this works. But in the long run, you need to also have return on the investment. Even when it's a small investment, even when people are incentivized to generally like speak up and they like their voice being heard, they want to see that this matters. And this is where the automation and complete autonomous delivery of insights all the way up the chain of command, but also for every employee gives the reason to speak up. So there's a return on investment for every employee where they get to see their mirror image, how they actually get perceived at work. And they know that up the chain of command, their visibility of their work is automatic. So several things have to come together simultaneously to unlock the truth. And I'm happy to sit here to tell you this is no longer just theoretical. It actually works.
So I know from in my own experience, when companies try to set up feedback systems, they set up surveys, they set up polls. I don't know if it's obvious how you ask for feedback. What are the kind of questions that lead to the most insight? I know you've done some standardization on it. What are some of the things that you think are important to ask about, regardless of what industry you're in?
Yeah, well, we start with an opening question that is that one is so obvious that I'll challenge anyone to object to that type of question. It is the type of question you'd ask at a happy hour coworker. How is John lately? How are they working lately? So that's the opening question: is how are they working lately? In that level of question, that surface level question, actually captures the entirety of that person's judgment about the other person as of late, the last impression they have. So based on that, we ask 5 deeper reflection questions. And to your point, we've standardized the type of behaviors that we should be exhibiting at work, regardless whether you're the CEO of Google or you're laying bricks, frankly. And those are communicates well, solves problems, fits on the team, follows high standards, and takes initiative. We can capture the sensing of those 5 activities by asking everyone the same thing about the specific person.
So let me ask you this. I'd be kind of curious to get your take on it. In any given day, I get sent 5 to 10 sort of surveys. You finish a support call. How do we do in this call? Or someone's doing market research, or there's an internal initiative or a client initiative. And so there's a tax to every one of these things. So to get feedback from someone has to be able to do it. You talked about ease, but why should someone, like, what's the benefit to me of filling out an anonymous feedback form about a coworker? How do you get people over that barrier?
Yeah. The thing that usually impacts your fulfillment level at work are other people at work, right? I mean, we spend 8 hours of our waking day interacting, working alongside human beings, and we're looking to create impact in our work. But
Mm-hmm.
some of them contribute to the impact we're trying to make, and some of them detract from the impact we're trying to make. So when there's an easy way to surface how you perceive that person's impact, and you know that will ultimately give them a heads up to be more impactful, better coworkers, and
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously surfacing that inside up for decision making, how these people are allocated, where they're positioned, how are they getting paid, are they getting promoted. You
Mm-hmm.
can probably see why this is actually a very, very good return on investment. It's not like a survey about your coffee, was it hot or warm? Because it either
Right.
was or wasn't. You're no longer going to eat the same coffee, or you're not going to drink the same coffee.
Right.
But that coworker, you're going to work again and again and again and again. And you actually want to nudge them to drive the right behavior by that person, because it's a big
Yeah.
part of your life.
I also think there's a generational component.
I mean, the inspiration came from a moment where I felt like I couldn't pop the bubble of my coworker, right?
Right.
And I would say I'm one of the more blunt people. I'm from Eastern Europe.
Right.
And even I had enough tact to understand, like, okay, this situation, if I just say it will create a lot of potential heartburn. And keep in mind, people feel compelled to respond to feedback in the moment. And when a human being presents some feedback to them, the ego usually activates. You want to defend, you want to explain, or you could spiral into an emotional kind of breakdown potentially. So feedback is very destructive potentially if delivered inappropriately in the wrong time. And this is why the easiest thing to do as a human being is to dodge feedback. Just don't say anything. That's just the easy path of no resistance. And that's systemic, right? Like that's just how humans are. So
Yeah.
now you put a bunch of humans in one place to work, and that systemic withdrawal from being honest and giving honest feedback becomes a systemic
Yeah.
risk and a really expensive problem.
I'm curious about a scenario where if I've just had a difficult conversation with a coworker and an hour later, I get Mirror 360 feedback that shows up in my inbox, even if they think they're anonymous, I'm going to have a pretty good hunch where it might have come from. How do you make sure that that information is really being protected and kept anonymous?
I like to say it's like designing a new board game. You have to think through these scenarios and design it so that it just cannot be broken. So in this particular case, in general, Mirror 360 generates invitations always Monday on a randomized basis for the week. And it opens a window of time, a week, for people to respond. People do not get their updated mirror image until Friday. So Friday, the new batch of new reflections will come. And that person would not know who was actually invited that week at all. So you as a receiver of your mirror image, you don't know if that person was invited at all. So you may have a sample size of only one or two new reflections this particular week, but you don't know from where. And when you even set up your own mirror, you just add whose perspective matters to you, and you leave it alone. And Mirror is gonna start picking those people on a random basis based on how closely you work with them, and that's the only thing you know.
Right.
The people who you work closely with will get asked more often on average, but you don't know exactly which week.
So I'm curious, like there's a lot more that you could do now. People have been talking about 360-degree feedback for years. There's a lot that you can do now with pattern matching, with machine learning, with AI, about in context, knowing when to ask someone something or how to interpret results. How do you see AI interacting with this?
The key element that AI unlocked here is harassment, and filtering for foul language or things that could become potentially legally risky for the business. Frankly, before AI, a system for true honesty at work could have created too much noise and potential legal risk. But AI helps us, number one, filter out those risky comments. They never go anywhere. They just get filtered. And number two, the reporting goes up in a clean signal. In fact, in addition to already standardization that already creates very clean inputs, the signal itself that gets analyzed in a way for action. So leaders really start to get reports like as if a management consultant came in, spend a month or two interviewing people and start telling them how to do their job better. This already can be done automatically thanks to AI.
Yeah, I find AI to be really powerful when you're using it, not just to generate information and not just to be a coworker. Those are amazing frontiers for AI we speak about a lot in this show. But being able to harvest data over time from really large data sets and from stuff that's messy, from text feedback, and being able to look for what are the trends and patterns.
What Mirror 360 actually does is to unlock a type of intelligence that is not actually anywhere in the digital realm. The intelligence of your employees behind their eyes, what they observe and judge in terms of the workplace and each other, is held up, brought home, and talked about with someone's spouse, with the neighbor. But it's actually the core type of friction and even motivation or reason to quit that companies are blind to. Because currently they don't have the wires, they don't have the channel to pull out that type of knowledge and intelligence anywhere digitally. It just doesn't exist. So we're actually focused on that gap of the data itself, the fact that that type of data is invisible to the leaders, it's invisible to each other. And once we digitize it, then we layer AI. But I'm very clear to not make Mirror 360 like, oh, another AI company. It's the infrastructure to make AI useful when it comes to management innovation. Like you cannot really make AI innovation in management if you don't really know what's happening, what the employees actually experience day to day.
These days, work is divided across time zones, across geographies, across organizations. People are in different positions to observe what's happening around the organization. How do you solve for that challenge? Because someone who I work with next to on a day-to-day basis may actually have more signal about me than someone who's only going to see me on a conference call once a month.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, that's more of the rule. I mean, I was a manager of people at the last tech company I was working with. And I'll have like one-on-ones, maybe like an hour of the week I'll spend with my direct report. And everything else they would spend with other people. Now, how am I supposed to judge their performance? I mean, based on what they tell me and what it trickles up to me from their coworkers. But what trickles up is if I prompt it and if it's maybe something really bad or something amazing, really great, not the average. So I was pretty blind. And this was in a semi-remote setting. Back in the day, like you said, 50 years ago, around the water cooler moments in the hallways, people talk, it was somewhat easier. Although I would even challenge that even then, when you had big enough groups, again, ambiguity starts to happen, which is why we have really office politics, right? To manage that ambiguity. Sure. Now with remote work, it's become almost laughably hard to do that, to stay on top of what's really happening. So yeah, I think what Mirror 360 introduces is a way to effectively bring back the type of water cooler moment of insight digitally, automatically, and without much friction at all. It's like having all the time in the world to take the coworkers of your direct report out for happy hour, get them drunk so they tell you the truth. Hopefully, build enough rapport, whatever it takes to pull out the truth and say, "Hey, how is John working lately?" And that type of insight that comes from everybody that John works with is what Mirror 360 can deliver on tap every week, refreshed. Right? I mean, it almost seems unbelievable, but think about the fact that we have phones in our pocket. The technology is actually there. We just haven't had the intention to build a platform for truth because we've been wrapped around the question, what does HR want? What does an HR bureaucrat need to make their job a little bit easier? And it's a fair question, but that's not the question we asked. The question I asked was, why are the leaders the last to know what's actually broken on their own teams? Right?
So let me ask you this. What does success look like? If an organization is adopting your approach to creating these honest, direct, and safe feedback loops, what are the impacts and results that they can expect?
What is the difference in, that game when you're trying to reach the ending with your blindfold, right? And you're like feeling your way to the end goal post. The success here is you remove the blindfold. Okay. What is better about not being blind about what's actually the reality on the ground? A lot of things are better. Number one, you remove any bad toxic behavior. It almost starts to happen by itself because now that toxic behavior becomes exposed, illuminated, so people actually change their behavior. And we've seen something like 9 out of 10 underperformers step it up. As soon as they see their mirror image, now they know their blind spots. They start improving. We had a situation where a manager was toxic and the fulfillment level of that team was so bad that they replaced that manager. And they could watch in the real time as that team reaches something like 92% top fulfillment level in the whole company. They reached simply by illuminating what was the problem and management taking action. We see a lot of issues popping up through the comments about compensation. For example, like in one case, I love this. The owner said, my managers always say we need to pay our people more. And then Mirror 360 comes in and it shows, no, that's not the issue. Actually, there are management issues that could be resolved. And he realized, well, management wanted to raise their own salaries. So they messaged the message up like, hey, we need to raise the salaries of our subordinates, and then they can justify their own salary raise. So a ton of things that leaders actually fall victim to manipulation from middle management up could be also cleaned up. So a lot of things. I say it's the difference between turning on the lights or staying in the dark.
Right. So, Petar, you've already brought in your first fleet of paying customers. You've won the Bulgaria Startup World Cup, which is going to send you to San Francisco. What is the most common thing you're hearing from company leadership when they've adopted your platform?
The number one, how easy it is. Number one. In fact, we found early traction exactly the type of companies that historically have not even bothered with HR tools because, they are like manufacturing or retail operations that are really high pace and no time for bureaucratic kind of processes. I consulted for some big companies like Google, and they have a lot of time for bureaucratic processes, frankly, a lot of capacity. Here, our clients notice that Mirror 360, you just turn it on, it takes 2 minutes a week, and that shocks them. The other thing that they notice is the openness with which they can coach their people once they start seeing their mirror images. In one case, a leader said, I wasn't actually surprised by the mirror images and impact scores of the people, but they themselves were. So the people who got the mirror, for them, it was a realization. And as one of the consultants who deployed Mirror 360 on site, she said, Petar, this changes self-awareness for people. Like, this can change the world. Because it's that type of impact that we make on site. And for leaders who have always wanted ways to learn and to grow their employees, to coach them, this is like the easiest thing. Because now delivery of honest feedback becomes automatic, systemic. You don't need to depend on good managers to deliver the hard conversations. It just happens.
One thing I know that comes up a lot, by the way, in 12-step groups, sorry, I didn't let you know I was going to bring this one up. People talk a lot about the importance of standing in your truth. One thing I was really struck by when I met you is your connection to that level of honesty is important. You've talked about being able to come out as a gay man, what it means to be the father of twins. I'm just kind of curious, how does that level of authenticity help you solve these problems?
I think I had a visceral reaction to dishonesty at work. I mean, I think a lot of us do, but maybe for me it was even deeper because for so many years in the closet, I was living a sort of away from my truth, right? I was putting up on a mask, which made me maybe even more conscious about the mask to begin with, that I had one, right? And what my conviction was in my teenagers is that the world is going to collapse around me if I was honest. So the truth could be scary, very scary. And I think I empathize with people who fear the truth sometimes. And even sentiments that some people say, well, maybe leaders don't want the truth. Some people maybe will be hurt by the truth. And my conviction is never does the truth do damage. It may shock you. It may hurt your ego temporarily, but you will be better for knowing it. And the world will be better for knowing it. So my sense, you mentioned my kids, they're 3 years old. They're quite bright, genuine creatures. And I think all of us around kids wake up a bit to the honesty that emanates from the kid. And we can all learn from that honesty, because that's actually how we're born. The dishonesty only gets imposed on us by society, by the norms of things like that. And in many ways, disconnect us from ourselves. I do believe in a better world. And I do believe actually we're kind of prime with AI and everything happening for a big shift happening.
So this is the part of the podcast where I ask our guests about something from outside the world of business and technology. A book, a film, television show, something that's had an impact on you that you'd love to share with the audience.
Oh, I have one. Definitely made an impact. It's the second book of this guy, Eckhart Tolle. He's more famous for The Power of Now. But his second book is called A New Earth. And it's not that new, but I stumbled upon it recently. I listened to the audiobook. And on so many places, I would find myself just laughing out loud. And not at the content, but frankly at myself. Because the co-realization of the book is about how most of us really walk around in the grip of the ego, the story that we make up in our heads about us. Like who we are, how we're wronged, how we're right, what we deserve. And frankly, we do this all the time, automatically. And to have a book that really reveals it in a very logical way, but really touches your almost spirit. You can say you can become a little spiritual around it. Really, for me, hit home because of all the, the startup journey is not easy, and everything that's also happening with kids and everything in personal life, it could get overwhelming, and we can always wrap our heads around these stories. So this book was a really refreshing kind of sanity check and sober kind of look at what life really is. If I can leave your listeners with a question to ask themselves is, what story do you tell yourself that you take for the truth? Because these stories really are the ceiling we impose on ourselves, and we forget that we just made them up. Like they're not anywhere in the reality of the world.
So I'm really struck by that. The stories that we let people tell about us sometimes become the stories we start telling ourselves about ourselves. And frequently those aren't true. So thank you for sharing that. I will include a link to that in the show notes for folks who want to look it up. How can the audience stay in touch with you and what's coming up next for you in Mirror 360?
Well, it will be in November, the World Cup of startups. It's kind of funny that today, as we're recording, it is the opener for the World Cup. But people can get in touch with me. The best is on LinkedIn, the professional Petar Kralev, or Substack. I check out Mirror 360 at mirror360.org, and there's even a 2-minute explainer video on how it works.
Absolutely. Petar Kralev is the founder of Mirror 360, whose latest news, the Startup World Cup regional win that's sending his team to San Francisco this November. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It was a pleasure.
We'll be right back. Up next on Polaris Events. Summer 2026 is absolutely not slowing down for conferences. Here's what we're watching. TechCon 365 Chicago. This is kicking off June 15th at McCormick Place in Chicago, Illinois, and running throughout the week. TechCon 365 Seattle. This will be coming back to Seattle on August 24th through 28th. We'll be joined by our colleagues from across the community as well as Microsoft to present our latest news and guidance about AI, Microsoft 365, and more. Last, Collab New England. This is coming up October 16th at the Microsoft New England office in Burlington, Massachusetts. We're looking forward to joining you at one of these events. We'll have details on all of that and more in our show notes and on the Synozur blog. You can learn more at synozur.com/events, and we'll add more events throughout the year. And if you have an upcoming event you'd like us to promote on Polaris, please get in touch, and we'd be happy to include it. Next on Polaris, I'll be sitting down with Bill Barkovic from Microsoft and Michelle Boyd from Synozur to talk about Native American tribes. In North America, Native American technology leaders navigate a complex mix of businesses: energy, health, gaming, education, public safety, and more. Increasingly, AI is central to their mission. We were just at the Microsoft Tribal CIO Summit in April at the Redmond campus, so don't miss it. Well, that's a wrap for another episode of Polaris. I'd like to thank our guest, Petar Kralev, for joining us and sharing his thoughts on honest feedback and the truth about how work really works. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to everything we talked about today and more. Visit us at polaris.synozur.com. Send us your questions and feedback for the Synozur team. You can reach us via email at polaris@synozur.com. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. And follow us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Polaris is produced with help from Riverside FM. Our theme song, Alternative Dream, is provided courtesy of Adobe. Additional music and sound provided by Indie Guy Records. Graphic design by Josh Brantley. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris McNulty, and this has been Polaris, a show that charts the course for business and technology transformation from Synozur. Learn more at synozur.com. See you next time. Keep following your North Star.